In this lesson, we'll work on fixing the fluidity of the gallop. Part of our mission, we can say, in fixing the fluidity here is also going to be to make sure we're maintaining the right poses. Let's go to the side view really fast and notice something. Notice how high the left leg is coming up, or the left thoracic limb is coming up compared to the right. So we're going to want to make sure that our pose is correct for the right. Okay. Again, we are doing an asymmetrical gait, but some things as far as our poses are going to be still similar. So we're going to want that right limb coming up almost as high as the left is coming up. So for that, let's go to frame 9, where the leg should be up a little bit higher. We'll select the right leg. Okay, staying to the side view, we'll also go back to our graph editor, and we'll go to our translate Y, and we're going to want to take this key and bring it up some. So let's go ahead and select it. We'll hold shift and middle mouse button, click and drag up just slightly to about this position here. Then from there, we'll go to our Z, because we're also going to want to bring that forward since the leg should be straightened out. We'll hold shift and middle mouse button, click and drag. Okay, to about a point, again, where the leg has a slight bend but not totally straight, so that we won't get any locking. Great, so that's looking better as we scrub back and forth. Excellent, so now we have the leg positioned in a better spot. So that's, again, something important we want to keep in mind. It's going to help our cycle look much better too once we have our poses more realistic. And just a quick tip before moving on into actually cleaning up our F curves. To navigate through the graph editor, one thing we can do is hold Alt Shift and right mouse button, click and drag vertically, and that will squash or stretch our view depending on which direction we're moving in, either up or down. But that'll help us to see our F curve in a little bit more detail that way. And we can do the same thing horizontally. Right mouse button, clicking and dragging left and right after holding Alt and Shift. So those are a few things we want to keep in mind. And another thing is going to view and showing buffer curves. What we're going to be doing is cleaning up our F curve, seeing what keys we won't need, what keys we will need, and also adjusting the flow of our tangency. Now, when we delete keys, let's say if we wanted to keep a pose that we liked. Well, let's say if we took this key on frame 7 and deleted it. Notice what happens. We see an outline view when we select our curve. We see an outline view of how the curve once looked. Now, let's say if we wanted to maintain that pose or get something near to it, what we could do now is just select one of our keys, select a half of our tangent handle, in this case the left, and middle mouse button, click and drag down until our F curve matches where the key once was. So that's a way of optimizing our keys and still getting a nice result. Okay, but let me go ahead and undo those moves. Now that we've got all of these things done that we do have, fixing our pose for these front legs, we'll now go ahead and spend some time cleaning up our curves. And still, since we have this one already selected, we'll go to our Y, select our translate Y, hit F, and we'll start with that, working our way down since we didn't work on the X just yet, but we will need to a little bit later. So starting with the Y for this right thoracic limb, we'll go back to our perspective view and work on cleaning it up. And here I want to also stress an important point about cycles and about showing infinite curves. We can bring back our curves here so we can see them. Notice what we're getting going from our infinite curve into our absolute curve. Okay, we're going to want a nice blend, a smoother blend as we go from our infinite to absolute. And what I think is a common mistake with cycles is that people would select the ends of their cycle and just flatten the tangents on that. And that's not the way to go at all times. We want to get a smooth result going from our out to our in. So we need to adjust our tangency in order to get that. So what we'll do to start out with, for our translate Y, select our start and end keys. Okay, and with them selected, we'll hold shift and middle mouse button, click and drag down just slightly to about that position there. Okay, then from there, let me go ahead and check that. Okay, great. Making sure we got both sides. Now from there, we'll select both right halves, just making sure we have both halves, identical halves selected, or you could do left, but make sure both identical halves are selected. So in this case, it's the right. Then we can just focus on one side and middle mouse button click and drag up, and we'll be moving both. And notice we're getting a smoother blend now, going from our infinite right into our absolute, going from our end right into our start, and also start to end if we go ahead and check that out. So that's one way we could achieve a nice blend. That's going to help us achieve a nice seamless cycle that we're going for. So we want to keep that in mind in our cycles. Now as we continue, let's see what else we can clean up. Okay, it looks like we can also clean up this area here from frame 6 all the way to about frame 8. Okay, we don't really need those keys, let's see if we don't need those keys actually. Let's see if we go ahead and delete them, if it's going to hurt or help our animation. Okay, notice it hasn't really hurt it. It's actually kind of improving the fluidity that we're getting, the fluid results. Great. If we go ahead and hit play and check that out, so that's fine. And then we'll also need to adjust our Z too. So now that we have this area cleaned up, we could also, for our last task, delete this key on frame 11 since we didn't need it. We already have keys locking our positions on frames 10 and 12, so we didn't need that key. It was an excess key on frame 11. From there, let's go ahead and go to our Z and start cleaning things up. And we'll get to our first and last frame a little bit later. What we'll do now is focus on seeing if we need the keys again from frame 6 to 8. Let's see what happens if we go ahead and delete those 3 keys. And then adjust the tangency on frame 5. So we'll get a smoother flow. Okay. Alright, so once we've got that, let's see how that's looking. Okay, that's looking pretty good. We're getting some nice fluidity. We could even hit play and check that out. And we may notice that our leg is looking better from the improvements that we've made already. But let's go ahead and continue. Let's see this key on frame 3. Do we actually need it? Is it going to help us or hurt us? Or let's go ahead and see what happens if we select it and delete it. And notice nothing major happened, so that's going to be fine. And then when we adjust frames 1 and 13, we'll even get the pose or similar pose to what we had on frame 3 for the Translate Z. So let's go ahead and continue. Okay, so frame 10, let's go ahead and adjust the tangency here so we get a nicer flow. And even though it's just one frame going from 9 to 10, we still want a nice blend, again, just to get into the habit of getting nice results in our F-curves, which are going to lead to nice results in our animation. Now, here we have the foot planted from about frames 10 to 12, okay? And it's rolling up on 12. What we want to do here is make sure we get a linear flow going from where the foot is planted, okay? Not when it rises up, because we want smooth arcs there, but we want a linear flow here. So what we need to do is make sure that we get the linear flow where it needs to be. So like on frame 10, even though we want to make that linear, we just want to make the right half linear, not the left. Okay, and that's going to help us to get that nice, again, movement going on as the foot's planted. So to do that, to just affect the right half, what we need to do is select the key and go to Keys, Braid Tangents. Now, when we move the right half, for example, notice the left half is not going to be influenced at all. So that's another really cool trick, and that comes in handy for other things like ball bounces. But getting back to the to our planted foot, now we can select the right half and make it linear. Go into this icon here, and then for 11, we can get rid of that key. We won't need it. Okay, since we want to get a linear flow from 10 to 12. Then we'll select this key on frame 12, and we'll also break its tangent and just select the left half and make that linear this time. Great. So now the foot's going to be planted as it needs to be. And this is going to help for when it comes time to translating our gallop forward and making that look believable, realistic. Great. So now that we have this, we can move on to our last key, frame 13, and also our first key, frame 1, selecting their right halves, focusing on one side since we'll be moving both, and middle mouse button clicking and dragging up so we can get a smoother blend. And notice, as we said before, it's getting closer to the position on frame 3. So that's fine. Well, here's what we have right now. Excellent. We're getting smoother results in that right thoracic limb. Well, now that we have this, let's go ahead and stop the lesson here. And in the next lesson, we'll just continue on this process of cleaning up our F-curves and fixing the flow of our animation.